They called him the shepherd of the bone church. That was our first mistake, assuming he was human. For 7 years, we fought beside him. 7 years we lived on his promises alone. We were farmers, hunters, woodworkers. The Holy Roman Empire, a fractured mosaic of ambition and rust, was crumbling from within. The people cried out for a leader, for a warrior, for a shepherd. But God stayed silent, hiding his face behind clouds of snow. It was then that St. Theobald became our only hope. They arrived as winter tightened its grip, their faces grim beneath their cloaks. By nightfall, most of the village had gathered in the chapel, clutching rosaries and crucifixes. The doors were shut, the windows nailed. From somewhere in the shadows, Victor unlocked the ossuary gate. Its hinges moaned like a banshee, echoing through the stone chamber. Then he was gone, vanished beneath the earth for 3 days. Are you the sort of men who knew the difference between an axe and a prayer? Their faces pale in the torchlight, blanketing the fields in white and burying our meager stores. We were trapped beneath the weight of winter, surrounded by death and dying. The stream ran red with iron. Each day the villagers grew thinner, their faces gaunt, their eyes haunted. It was then that the shepherd of the bone church declared war. Victor emerged from the crypt, his habit stained not with dust, but blood not his own. In his hand, he clutched a silver chalice filled with something dark and ancient, and in that moment, he did not look human. Behind him, they say, the bones of St. Theobald rose from the darkness. He wore no flesh, only a rusted chainmail the color of dried roses and a crown of tarnished gold that left bloody scratches on his skull. His jaw was a shelf of bone, his eyes empty sockets. And yet it was he who led us to war, or perhaps we were merely lost to his madness. Yet we marched behind a man who spoke in riddles and raised armies from the dead. Some say it was madness, others nostalgia for blood. Our existence a secret known only to the wind and the pines, of an empire built on the bones of heathens and held together with prayers. He divided the villagers into companies, assigning leaders, planning marches, issuing orders. He drilled us relentlessly, preparing us for a fight we could not win. But we fought anyway, because when God is silent and kings are cruel, even the dead make better shepherds than the living, because sometimes the only way out is through, and sometimes you have to fight a war even when you know you're already dead. That was why nothing changed when the century turned and the Bishop of Regensburg demanded his due. We paid our tithes in kind, sending up our finest grain and fattest cattle, all blessed by Father Victor. It was Father Victor who had come to us from Mainz, a black-robed monk banished for heresy. He was our link to the outside, our messenger of God. He was also our curse. But the truth is more bone churches should have risen. That winter of 1297, Europe was locked in winter's embrace, a frozen canvas of grey skies and hardened hearts. No map remembers Greifenwald, the village where he died. Our existence is a whisper in old books, a secret kept alive by the pines and peaks of the Bavarian Alps. The story goes that Theobald died in the snow, a warrior monk whose prayers brought him and his followers peace, even as pagan arrows tore through his flesh. His eyes were said to have remained open, gazing at the heavens, daring God to grant his wish for the annihilation of heathens. We believed his spirit lingered, guarding us from the cold and the darkness, watching over us from his grave. And for nearly a century, we honored him in silence. No candles flickered in our chapel, no bells chimed to call us to prayer. To utter his name was to invite scrutiny, not from the church, but from something older, hungrier, colder. Our sanctuary was deep in the mountains. Rumors of our bone church carried on the winds and reached the ears of the bishop. Soon riders were sent to Greifswald to collect our grain. On the third night, the bells began to ring. No one had touched them. The villagers pressed against the chapel doors. The bishop's men had taken most of our grain, and with it, our hope of survival. The snow fell harder now. He spoke of a great battle, of kings and crusades. I am just glad my bones will remember the warmth of the sun and the sting of the snow. The snow melted strangely that year, not by sun but by presence. That city was their objective and their obsession. It was small, maybe to 100 souls, clustered around a chapel as black as a crow's wing. No smoke rose from its chimney. The infant marked with ash in the shape of a sword on his brow. Old women dipped arrows in their own blood. Theobald did not give orders, but they felt his will. "We do not kill." He said, "We return." Someone asked, "Return what?" Victor smiled, slow and solemn. "Justice." By then, even the skeptics marched in step. Even the sane whispered to the skull of a dead saint. In dreams, in silence, in a coldness that wasn't weather. And in the square, Victor's voice preaching, "Suffering is a currency," and the saint has returned to collect. No sound came from behind its locked doors. Here, the bishop's men had taken to boys. How could a corpse inspire such devotion? How could dead men march without decaying? And so, 6 of the bishop's finest rode out to meet them, not in battle, but in curiosity. That was their mistake. Theobald's procession did not hold. The soldiers raised flags, then swords, then screams. Witnesses say Theobald's bones moved just once, a single step, and all 6 riders were torn apart not by weapons but by unseen hands. Flesh peeled from bone. Their horses fell on their own blades. The snow did not stain red, it turned black, as if mourning. The eldest was 14, the youngest barely 7. They left, of course, because there was nothing to take. And so it was here that Theobald was brought into the chapel. The doors were locked, and in the morning something was different. Not the weather, nor the road, nor any sign of God's intervention. But when they pushed open the chapel doors, something had shifted inside. There was a well in the center of the room, filled with water that had not dripped through a hole in the roof, but sat serenely in a bucket. And kneeling beside it, the 2 boys, eyes closed in prayer. When they opened them, they wept, not for themselves, but for the elderly woman who had died in the night, her face serene as if forgiven. And so they let her die. She had been spared, and now she would be saved. The 2 boys knelt beside her, holding her hands. They prayed to Theobald, asking for absolution for sins they had not committed, but which the world would soon know. They left her in the morning, placed in the bucket, lowered into the well. Later, the villagers would find her, frozen solid, a silver crown of ice on her head, her lips moving as if in prayer. When they stopped to rest, which was rarely, fires were lit and prayers were spoken. Not to God, for he had turned a deaf ear to their pleas. They prayed to Theobald, asking for absolution for sins they had not committed, but which the world would soon know. Wherever Theobald was carried on a bier of blackwood and iron nails, the frost retreated. His bones, bound by wire and devotion, did not walk, but they commanded movement. Behind him marched men who had never held swords, women who had never prayed out loud, children with torches in trembling hands, and at the head of them all Victor Brandt, unshaven, hollow-eyed, glorious. He carried no weapon, only a book, bound in what looked like leather, but smelled of wax and bone. He claimed it was Theobald's own gospel, never written, only whispered. Its pages were blank, but Victor could read every word. They did not march on a road or follow a river. They went wherever hunger drove them, but always west, toward Regensburg. On the 3rd day, they came upon a village. In the next village, an entire family was found kneeling in a frozen pond, faces serene beneath the ice. They were not an army, but they became one. Farmers wore breastplates over linen. Shepherds sharpened crooks into halberds. When the messenger arrived at Ratisbon, he told what he had seen and heard. Some believed him, some didn't, but they were curious. That night, Victor stood in the ruins of a barn and preached. They made camp within sight of Ratisbon's spires. Theobald's skull was crowned again, and the war if it was war was only just beginning. Once upon a time, there was a man named Theobald. He walked among us. Where exactly it was or is, no one knows. Maybe a village in the Alps, maybe a valley lost in the clouds, maybe a name given to any place where ice hung heavy in the air. All we know is that on the morning after, the sun rose on a sight no one had ever seen. The dawn over Regensburg was red. And this story, well, it came to me from an old woman in a village in the south. I paid her handsomely for it, but she insisted on one thing. She wanted me to deliver a message. To those who seek stories like these, she said, "I've got to words, look harder." And that, my dear listener, is the end of our tale. Or perhaps it's just the beginning. Not poetic, read, not metaphor, they are confronted by a series of unexplainable events that defy the boundaries of the natural world. Whispers of her presence linger in the wind, sending chills down their spines and leaving them questioning the veil between the living and the dead. And then there's Peter, the girl's devoted companion, who is plunged into a state of despair and disbelief. Consumed by grief and determination to uncover the truth, he embarks on a relentless pursuit of justice, determined to expose the dark secrets that lie at the heart of the tragedy. And yet, despite its age, it continues to captivate audiences with its haunting narrative and memorable characters. I can't say for sure. This story is full of twists and turns that will keep you guessing until the very end. So, why are you still here? Go on, click that link and dive into a world where beauty collides with envy, where love is tested, and where the boundaries of life and death are blurred. Trust me, you won't regret it. Lived a young girl with skin as white as snow. With manipulative cunning, she convinces the unsuspecting girl to accompany her on a journey to gather herbs, all while concealing her wicked intentions. What follows is a chilling tale of deceit and unimaginable horror that will leave you breathless, lips as red as blood and hair as black as night. The story takes a horrifying turn when the stepmother, driven by jealousy and a lust for power, strikes a fatal blow against the unsuspecting girl, ending her life and casting a long shadow of despair over the lives of those around her. However, as the tale progresses, the narrative takes an unexpected twist. The girl's spirit, far from finding peace, returns to seek vengeance against those who have wronged her. Her beauty was a legend, drawing the attention of every suitor in the land. But her heart belonged to a dashing young man named Peter, who returned her affection with unwavering devotion. Their love story was the talk of the town, a beacon of romance in a world often lacking in charm. But alas, their idyllic world was about to shatter. If you're looking for more stories like this, I have just the thing for you. It's called The Juniper Tree, and it's a tale of betrayal, murder, and revenge. Let me set the stage. The sky bled with a hue that even the monks dropped their incense and fled. For as Theobald's procession approached the gates, the city's bells cracked. Not told cracked, splitting in half, mid-air ringing no sound but echo. Well, maybe not among us, but among them. In a time before clocks, when counting the hours was a luxury, there was a place where the sun rose at the same time every morning, and it was called Gryffindor, or so they called it when I told them to. You see, I am a collector of stories, and this is one of my acquisitions. But don't worry, it's coming back to you soon enough. For now, though, let's return to Gryffindor. And then the bells fell silent, and so did the city. All noise, all life seemed to hold its breath until the bishop, a man named Adelhard von Lewenstein, once known for eloquence and cruelty in equal measure, addressed the crowd from his balcony in the cathedral square. He called them heretics, blasphemers, insane. And then he paused. His voice broke, for from behind the crowd, Theobald arrived, hoisted not on shoulders but carried by those who had once been enemies. Taxmen, soldiers, even a priest. They dropped to their knees. No one touched the cathedral gates. They opened on their own, and Victor walked inside. They say no one heard what passed between him and the bishop. Only the silence was real. And then the stained glass window above them shattered, piece by piece. In silence, there were no executions, no fires, no mobs, only a quiet arrangement. The taxes stopped. The bells were buried. The cathedral was turned into a shrine not of worship, but of reminder. St. Theobald remained in the city centre for 6 more days, during which time pilgrims came from as far as Bohemia. Some came in awe, some in terror. Most came for forgiveness. On the 7th day, he vanished. Victor was never seen again, but the book remained, sealed in a vault beneath the altar, and every generation, someone tries to read it, but the pages are still blank, unless, they say, you have something worth returning. And when the crowd was finally allowed in, Adelhard von Lewenstein was kneeling, eyes gone, tongue bitten off, hands folded in prayer, still warm. In the days that followed, Regensburg changed. Now, like I said, I am a collector of stories. You see, This story first appeared in a collection of fairy tales by the Brothers Grimm, deep in the heart of the Black Forest, nestled among ancient trees and shrouded in mystery. One fateful day, the girl's stepmother, consumed by envy of her stepdaughter's beauty, hatches a sinister plan. But wait, I'm only getting started. As the girl's loved ones grapple with the aftermath of her untimely demise, will he succeed?